what we're going to do is, before we get into debating and talking about an agenda for 2020, we have asked 4 people to comment from their seats, just a minute or so, who each represent sort of experts in our field from different regions of the world. And I guess, I know you've got some thoughts already because you've been asked to do this, but I guess I'd like to pose something to the 4 of you, which is, we just heard 3 clients, big companies, well-known in this space, leaders in their industry, the communications heads from each, one from Memphis, Tennessee, then from Europe and from Asia, basically say in some respects provide a list of 5 things that were remarkably similar in terms of what dots do we as an industry need to connect. Previously, we had professional associations up here talking more broadly about the need for standards. And so I'd love to get your reaction to, they were very specific as to what we need to focus on in the next 10 years. So I guess my question almost to the 4 of you is, so what are we going to do about it?
The presentation, I think one of the themes that we heard in each of the organizations was around a common definition. And yesterday, we did the first step, I think, in a discussion, and we realized how painful that was, around social media common definitions. And I think all of our organizations are struggling with that. I think it's up to us as a trade association, if one of the goals is to educate the industry and to grow the industry around measurement and best practices, is to really push hard at coming up with not the ceiling on the definitions, but the floor. I think Casey said that in the past. We heard some great ideas yesterday around baselines and metrics. Things like just even defining what's a mention. I mean, that was a great suggestion. So I would encourage, as we look at the IPR and PRSA events coming up, and then the push towards November, to really work hard to set the stage and the agenda around common definitions, not just around social media, but even traditional media. I think we've still struggled with that. So if we could just focus on the baseline metrics, things like some of the things we heard yesterday, we heard today during Cindy's presentation around scale. What is the scale? I think that's another good area we could focus on. So there's a number of these through discussion within the association. I think we can move the agenda forward as well. Thanks, David.
I really love when I see these kind of clients with such a sophisticated demand of this kind of tools. We have some in our region, but we do not have just the amount that we would like to have. We have 2 kind of clients: the global companies which demand this kind of analysis, and we have local companies that did not demand practically analysis. So we need to go forward from this kind of discussions and this kind of tools, and we need to promote, and we will be promoting more media analysis. And I think that yesterday's discussions was really the way we need to go forward.
Thank you all for your fantastic presentations. I think the one thing that I would like to discuss would be, how do you take the huge organizations that you represent and localize your products and services in the 200 plus markets that you each operate in? And trying to look at a one-size-fits-all might be good from a corporate perspective, but when it means Microsoft India, how do you relate to what's effectively a continent? What's important to Microsoft in Bangalore? What's important to Philips in Egypt? What's important to FedEx in Dubai? And I'd be very curious to know how you're going to be able to cut down and size your measurement plans to be much more effective on local communications, because that's really where it all begins.
What we did is we had to make choices, and this was not an easy process because our organization was used to media monitoring. And to give you an example, I think we had countries in Europe that monitored between 500 and 600 media on a monthly basis. And we had to get back to those markets and say, from now on, you're only going to we're going to measure only 15 media. But these are the most critical media for our reputation in your market. That is based on a budget discussion, but it's also, I think, based on a proper discussion on who is really relevant for your business in your market. Because I think that 80% of the in this case, traditional media represent 20% of the media represent 80% of the reputation. And there you have to make choices. These are not the easy choices. And it took us 1.5 years, and we still have those discussions, because there's still markets who say, I want to have all my 500 media monitored. And we're simply not going to do that anymore.
There are actually two parts to it, to your question. One can be in the sheer execution of the measurement, but two can also be in the localization of the messaging and content. At Microsoft, we have pretty broad parameters on the image agenda. So if one of them is contributing to local economies, that applies in every country. We may have different programs that contribute towards that, but all of our clips that we are generating, on the media that we are generating, the conversations that we are generating on that particular thing would get marked under that image agenda. So you are able to do local work, local messaging, but within a broad framework of the global capturing of the data. And clearly, it's, again, a little bit of a local decision to say, okay, how many media would you like to measure? But I think that gets restricted just by sheer budget constraints. So again, the emphasis really, take the top 5 media, take the top 15 media, then see how you want to work, what do you want to achieve in that, and determine your targets for the year, and then accordingly measure them through the year. So I think it's both content and execution that gives you flexibility from a local framework.
Thank you. I think from the point of view from where I'm coming from in Asia Pacific is that I think we've heard enough about the mechanics of what we do as an industry, but what interests me is the education of our clients. And while I think it's commendable that we've got some great clients that accept and take on board what we do, I think there's also a growing breed of clients that aren't as accepting of what we do as analysts. And certainly within our region, with a contraction of university courses and public relations communications being contracted into generalist courses, that next breed of communicators coming through, I think is going to have a big struggle trying to accept what we do, and particularly in the framework of expanding our programs and getting a lot of budget for it. So I'd be particularly interested in hearing how you think your underlings are accepting of media analysis and how that's going to go forward in the future.
Sorry, can you, what was your question? Sorry.
I suppose my question is that it's great to see that you're very comfortable with what we're doing, but my question is, I don't think there's a lot of clients out there that are as comfortable as you are. So how do we measure, how do we adapt to that with a large client base that probably doesn't see the benefits of analysis as clearly and as well as you see it?
It's a very complex question, and there could be many levels at which we need to operate. One is we do need to educate even the C-suite, that if they are undertaking PR in their organizations, they need to have a way to measure it. Two, I think what is really difficult for clients to accept is that there is no one standard. If there is one standard, then they all aspire to be measured against that standard. When there isn't a standard, it's convenient not to be measured. So it's a little bit of a forcing function. If you have a standard, then they have to, and you sort of make that standard well known. And I mean, that's what we are experts at, is getting things known, creating awareness about that. Once there is that awareness that something like this exists, it's just a pull and push factor that will make it happen.
I think it's all about accountability. And I think that was mentioned during the panel discussion. If we want to be seen as professionals, like any other function in the organization, everybody has a sort of accountability. And I think we need to strive for more accountability and make yourself known into the organization, that the kind of work you do not only do on your gut feeling, but there is a reasoning behind it, and there is a research behind it, and you do the research afterwards, and you evaluate all the things you did together with your management team to make improvements or to see where things can be adjusted. It's all about accountability. And if you, I also hear the word fear. If you're afraid of being accountable, then indeed this becomes a mission impossible. But I think it's an enormous opportunity, and take that responsibility to show that you can be accountable for the things you do.
Okay, thank you for very much, and let's thank the panel here. Okay, we are going to move here to a voting/discussion of an agenda going forward. The things we're going to vote on have been pre-created. They were shaped by basically your responses to the delegate survey. They were shaped by the panel and their slides from the professional organizations, and they were shaped very much also by the client presentations. All right. Well, thank you all for voting on these. That was great. Everybody feel good? Got some priorities. We got an agenda kind of happening. All right. If Linnea, are you ready to switch back? All right. We wanted to show you these all together. Okay. These were the percent yes responses for the 10 items, just as you just voted. Linnea, thank you. And what you're seeing here, and I don't know if I'd pay exact percentage attention to the exact percentages. I mean, I made up the whole thing, picked 4 out of 10, but nonetheless, I think it does set some pretty clear priorities in terms of social media first, and we voted 2 ways, and we kind of got the same answer. Social media, education for clients, education for our industry, and then maybe a third priority then within that is the idea of how do we bring PR into the marketing mix / measuring brand equity. And then we see, I think, lower down, we see things like employee communications as an example of something that just doesn't index that high as we did here.